Today we are diving into the crazy and legendary world of Popeye before a new movie released.
Imagine a rough around the edges but kind-hearted sailor arriving in a bizarre little town called Sweet Haven. Why is he here? To find his long-lost dad, of course. He's not even sure his dad is here, but something tells him he's on the right track. Call it sailor's intuition. As soon as Popeye steps onto the shore, he runs into a problem. Taxes. That's right, the local tax collector charges for everything except the air. Probably there's a tax for breathing, walking, and even one for bringing your own luggage. And the best part, this taxman is serious about his job, like he's auditioning for the role of a villain in the next Batman movie. But just as our sailor is about to cough up some cash, a bunch of curious kids cause a distraction and the taxman bolts after them. Popeye seizes the moment to slip away. Smart move. Now he's free to roam around the town. And let's just say, Sweet Haven is a place with character. We've got people singing off key in the streets, random objects flying out of windows, and even a guy juggling fish. It's like a carnival, but everyone forgot to have fun. Popeye decides to find a place to stay, but Sweet Haven's residents aren't exactly rolling out the red carpet. They're acting like he's got the plague. He finally stumbles upon a shiny abandoned pipe lying on the street. Score! But just as he picks it up, a piano comes crashing down inches from his head. Who's throwing pianos in this town? At this point, you gotta wonder if this place is cursed. Turns out, Popeye's arrival does make waves in town. The townsfolk gossip non-stop, whispering about the strange sailor with bulging forearms and a pipe that's more like an extension of his face. This news spreads to a certain house where a woman named Olive Oyl lives. Olive is the town's beauty and drama queen. Think of her as a mix between a 1920s influencer and an escape artist. While most folks slam their doors in his face, Olive's mom, probably motivated by Popeye's rugged charm, agrees to rent him a room. Popeye accepts, happy to have a place to rest his head. But before he can even take a deep breath, Olive's on a quest to try on every ugly hat in existence for her date with Bluto, a guy with muscles the size of boulders and the brains of, well, a boulder. Now Olive isn't exactly thrilled about this arranged engagement, and she shows Popeye to his room with all the grace of a bull in a china shop. She manages to knock over half the furniture and show off some bloomers that haven't seen the light of day since the 1800s. But instead of being annoyed, Popeye's grinning ear to ear. He might be rough around the edges, but he's got a soft spot for clumsy charm. Later that night, dinner is served, and Popeye quickly realizes that in this noisy family, eating in peace is a luxury he won't be getting. It's less of a meal and more of a shouting contest. Overwhelmed, Popeye retires to his room, staring at a faded drawing of his dad, feeling in his gut that he's close to finding him. Next morning, he wanders into a local dive where he meets Wimpy, a man who's never met a burger he wouldn't mooch off someone else. Wimpy's got his eye on Popeye's pocket and his belly on a burger. When he hears Popeye's looking for his dad, he offers a deal. Buy me a burger and I'll tell you all I know. Classic Wimpy. Popeye humors him, but before they get too deep, the local gang starts laughing at Popeye's story. Bad idea, guys. Popeye might be a stranger in town, but he's not one to back down. After a few choice insults and a lot of eye rolls, Popeye decides it's time to introduce these clowns to his famous fists. Chairs fly, tables flip, and for a moment it's a WWE match in the middle of a cozy cafe. And just like that, our hero takes them all down, one punch at a time. Meanwhile, things are heating up for Olive. Bluto, who's not exactly known for his patience, arrives for their date. He's got the ring, the attitude, and the bad breath to go with it. Olive, however, has other plans. She decides she's not into marrying a guy who thinks shouting is a love language, and she sneaks out, leaving Bluto in a fuming rage. On her way out, Olive bumps into Popeye. They exchange a few witty banter lines, but before they know it, some stranger accidentally swapped her basket. And what's in the new basket? A snake? Because sound was like the snake there. A baby. That's right, folks. Surprise parenting time. Popeye reads a note attached to the little tyke. Raise me well, and I'll be picked up later. Seriously. Popeye doesn't hesitate. He decides to take on the dad role and names the little guy Swee'Pea. Olive, not wanting to be left out of the spontaneous adoption, becomes the mom. What could possibly go wrong? Of course, Bluto isn't thrilled when he spots his fiancée, Olive, with Popeye and a baby that seems to have appeared out of thin air. He stomps over, throws a jealous fit, and smashes anything within arm's reach. This sets off a full-blown town brawl that makes the earlier fight look like a warm-up. Olive's brother, Olive Castor, decided to step into the boxing ring. A giant boxer had arrived in town, and a fight with him promised to pay off all the taxes and offer a reward. All Castor had to do was survive one round against him. Castor thought it would be a piece of cake and that he could help his family that way, but he was wrong. Even his striped shorts and fighting spirit didn't help. His opponent knocked him out and sent him flying over Sweet Haven's harbor. Popeye couldn't bear to see such mockery. He handed the baby to Olive and jumped in the ring. The giant thought it would be even easier to deal with this little guy than the first one. But he was mistaken. All this time he was supported by a tiny mama. However, during the fight, Popeye missed and accidentally punched her in the face. After that, Popeye finished the fight by knocking out his opponent. Even Sweet Pea climbed into the ring to beat up the fallen boxer's belly. That evening, Popeye and Olive put Sweet Pea to sleep. Each of them dreamed of their own desires. Olive wanted the baby to always be with her, while Popeye dreamed of taking him out to sea. The two agreed on one thing: they wanted to be together, even if they didn't fully realize it yet. The next morning, Olive said that Sweet Pea could predict the future. Before that fight in the ring, he said that Popeye would be fine. Hearing this, Uncle Wimp decided to take a walk with Sweet Pea. He had a plan to make money off the baby. Popeye entrusted his adopted son to Wim, who took him to the races. Sweet Pea whispered to him which horse to bet on, and Wim won twice. Realizing that Uncle Wim would not return their son, Popeye and Olive's whole family set off to find him. They found a flyer at home with information about the races and realized Wim was making bets. Arriving at the smelly bookmakers, they pounced on the reckless uncle, but he showed his winnings and Olive quieted down, realizing they could use Sweet Pea just like the sports almanac from Back to the Future. Olive started placing bets, but only Popeye was against it. He took the baby and left. From that day on, he and Sweet Pea lived at the dock. Bluto watched the unfolding drama at the racetrack. When Popeye left, he called Wim over and gave him an important task. He had to kidnap Sweet Pea and hand him over to Bluto. Soon, an opportunity presented itself. A tax collector came to demand money for breaking yet another absurd rule. However, the sailor refused to pay, knocking the collectors into the water, which delighted everyone at the docks. They carried him on their shoulders, and for a few minutes, Sweet Pea slipped out of Popeye's sight. When he ended up with Wim, the latter handed the boy over to Bluto and left. When Popeye discovered Sweet Pea was missing, he began to grieve. He even wrote a letter for Sweet Pea and threw it into the sea in a milk bottle. Meanwhile, Olive found herself falling more and more in love with him. Sweet Pea was now on Bluto's boat, and one day, Olive noticed Wim watching through a spyglass. She demanded an explanation, and Wim confessed he had handed over the baby. The bearded man tried to feed him spinach. The one doing so had arms like Popeye, but the boy refused to eat the green treat. It turned out that Commodore was hiding on the boat, who was, in fact, Popeye's father. For many years, Bluto was loyal to him, but now decided to act independently. After learning that he could find hidden pirate treasure with the boy's help, he tied up the old man, took Sweet Pea, and planned to flee. Olive and Wim realized Commodore was Popeye's father and ran to tell him. The brawny sailor didn't immediately believe the story, but eventually decided to check. Seeing his father tied up, he rushed to him, forgetting about Sweet Pea, who was discreetly taken away by Bluto at that moment. The old man refused to acknowledge Popeye as his son. To prove their relation, he told Popeye to eat spinach. The thing is, spinach can give incredible strength to Popeye and his father. However, the happy son refused to eat it. After freeing his father, he realized Bluto had taken Sweet Pea and fled. Under the open sky, the old man guessed that his accomplice was heading to Fear Island, so they needed to catch and stop him at any cost. Popeye, his father, and Olive's relatives all set off in pursuit. Bluto managed to capture Olive along the way. Eventually, the old man acknowledged Popeye as his son, but when they saw Bluto's boat near the shore, the old man ordered them to fire a cannon at it. Popeye protested. After all, Sweet Pea and Olive might still be on board, but the old sea wolf didn't care. Reload! He wanted to protect his treasure from Bluto's greedy hands. However, Bluto had already left the ship and arrived at the spot where the chest of treasures had sunk. While he was diving for it, Popeye and his father rammed his boat and almost drowned themselves. Seeing Bluto, Popeye jumped into a fight with him. The old man pulled the chest out of the water and then rescued the baby. When Bluto grabbed the chest, he awakened an octopus guarding it. Despite all its efforts, the boy survived. After pulling him ashore, the old man showed Sweet Pea the chest's contents, various children's items and cans of spinach. Meanwhile, Popeye and Bluto moved from hand-to-hand combat to a duel with sabers. After losing Sweet Pea, the octopus, having watched too much anime, began to capture Olive with its tentacles. It dragged her underwater, but she kept struggling and calling for help. The old man decided to help Popeye and threw him a can of spinach. Disobedient boy, catch! He hoped this green stuff would make his son stronger. Bluto didn't know about spinach's special property and force-fed it to Popeye. After that, Popeye gained incredible strength. The first thing he did was beat up the octopus and throw it into the open sea, and then he went after Bluto. The giant decided to swim to another continent. Popeye and Olive's family began to dance a lively dance. They found the treasure, saved the baby, and Olive gorged on spinach, while they also drove away the villain.
And that's a pretty good reason to celebrate, isn't it? Here's the new video, new film. Don't forget to watch it and subscribe to this channel if you like this recap.